How's it going, everyone? Runt9 here, and welcome back to another episode of Runt9 Plays City Skylines. We're in the city of Pyradian, episode number 11. In the last episode, we built out a new little industry area and ran a train line up down the middle of our service road so that we could get people in and out of that part of the city. In this episode, our main focus is going to be building out the suburban side of that new part of the city. But I did go through and fix up a couple of things that I'm going to run through before we get started. Once again, this is me trying to get back on schedule, so you should be watching this on Thursday, May 16th. I'm probably going to go ahead and record Saturday and Monday episodes today as well, just because I want to kind of get ahead of things. I know that I'm going to be pretty busy this weekend, so my thought process is that it'd be a good idea to go ahead and get out in front, get a little bit of a backlog going. That way I have videos ready to go, already ready to upload, and all that good stuff. So without further ado, let's dive in, take a look at where our city's at. So I'm going to start off with a pause. And what I did first was I went ahead and laid out the water grid up here. Again, I did that off camera because it's boring and everyone knows how to lay water lines. You don't really care to watch me do it. I also went through some of the monotony of the vehicle bans down here. One interesting thing that you'll see is that on the main outer loop here, I still have garbage trucks banned, but on these individual streets going in between, I allowed garbage trucks. And part of the reason why was I moved the, obviously when we got rid of this, I moved the garbage plants, recycling plants and stuff up here. Well, what would happen is they would have to go down here, go on the national highway, come back up here just to get to that building. Instead, they can go back and forth on these roads as necessary, and it seems to be, having plenty of coverage up here just fine. Our garbage coverage seems to be okay throughout the city. We can mess with it more as need be. I did go ahead and do the D-zone and rezone up here. Obviously, some time has passed, so the ground pollution is cleared up. So you can see that we've got some fancy new high-density residential here, low-density residential here. Residential demand is already going down, so everything is good in that part of town. This station to this station turned out to be a much more difficult connection than I ever intended on it being. So if you remember, we had it coming straight across over that road under all of this highway garbage and connecting up right here. What would happen is if a train was on this side of the tracks and needed to come around to this side and then go up, and there was another train right here, you get a deadlock. So I had to fix it by pulling this down here and then immediately going into a tunnel that comes out right here. Now I also said that I would tie this in to the external train route. Also did not work. I had this coming off at about this angle, heading out over here, and same deadlock problem that I just mentioned, and also couldn't find a way to tie it in that direction. I just kind of gave up. Really, we want this to be a single line from this station out into the suburbs and industry, which I have already done renames for internal loop and to suburbs, which the passenger counts are picking up. It's nice. If you actually go to this station, you'll see there's quite a lot of people here. Now, I imagine most of them are tourists coming in from the outside, but that's still good for us. And obviously, the metro lines are still absolutely filled with people. If we go take a look at these, you can tell that the metro trains are pretty much running at a solid capacity. We actually could probably get by with a few less. You can see like this station, though, has 62 people waiting, and are probably dealing with a little bit of a deadlock or something. Things get bugged out. Details. Going through my list here, making sure I got everything. It looks like that is everything that I did off camera. There might have been a couple other things, like I said, just fixing some deadlocks on the train lines and things like that. But in this episode, our main focus is going to be building out this nice little suburban area out here. So we're not going to have any other highway connections going out here. This is really all going to be just residential roads. One thing I do want to do is run a commercial street along the train that loops back up here. Just that way we have a little bit of a noise buffer between the residents and the train line. So let's do that first. I think that probably going to be fine just using the regular 2-lane roads and not building tunnels. We may actually be able to just go right over that train line. Not quite. It's not quite built into the ground enough. Maybe it should be, though, because it is going directly down into a tunnel, so maybe I will just bring that node down a little. Okay, not quite that far. That looks a little awkward, but let's see if we can go across with a little bridge here. Not quite. Okay, that's not going to work the way that I wanted it to, which is perfectly fine. So probably what's going to be best is, can we run this one across? Nope. Does not look like there's a point at which we can cross those train tracks. Now maybe if we go here and right about there and go here and bump the height up, we can get across, which makes sense. The train can fit under there just fine. And honestly, I'm going to just use move it to set that back into the ground and then immediately bring that down. We'll use road anarchy here just because I'm a little frustrated with what it's doing to me. I still did that wrong. Let's do a quick upgrade on that segment. Okay, now I'm happy. I want to curve this up like so, and then we're going to do just a long sweeping curve with the grain of the train there. Follow the curvature around and then make kind of a harsh curve there. I honestly hate that and think it looks terrible. So instead, we're gonna come around the road with a 90-degree angle there. And probably do a bit of a crazy curve like that. Once we buy the next tile, this will probably end up being some nice residential zoning. At least that's what I would guess. I do want to also tie this in. Maybe have one road that leads to the industrial section so that there's more than one way to get there besides just the one national highway, because otherwise that will end up getting a little bit clogged as time goes by. We're gonna, this is up in the air, so let's get this about like so. Okay, perfect. Come around under the highway, loop this around, and that is our suburban area. And you know what I like to do, in case you haven't had an opportunity to see the single snowfall stream I did a ways back, which I would like to stream City Skylines again, but I kind of am a little bit caught up in City of Heroes being back, so you'll kind of have to excuse the fact that there just isn't going to be much streaming when I'm playing City of Heroes most all night every night. Let's kind of get this cleaned up a little bit. Just so that the zoning looks a bit more correct. And I'm also actually going to go in and upgrade this road to a 4-lane road, and we may end up doing trams. For the moment, I'm actually just going to use the simple 4-lane road like this, just so we have a bit more traffic flow possibilities. Let's turn road anarchy off before I accidentally do something I regret. Don't remember how long that's been turned on for, so potentially a bad thing, but we'll find out the hard way. Again, only emergency vehicles and garbage trucks can turn that way anyways, so I'm not too terribly concerned about what that does. And now we can start floating off some internal streets using just 2 lanes. Let's turn the 1 meter, 0 meter. Okay, grab our freeform tool and let's just start connecting things up. I like to do things pretty free-flowing, and it makes it feel a bit more natural to me, giving a bit more opportunities for things like what would essentially be cul-de-sacs or things like that. Less major connections to the avenues, I guess. Apparently, this is messing with the height as I go through this. Can we get the height to not be wonky? Now, obviously, I say this is going to be suburban, so I do specifically mean that it's going to be low-density residential, but I want these streets to be reasonably high density. And what I mean by that is I want there to be a lot of streets so that there's a ton of zoning opportunity, but I don't want there to be so many intersections on the main streets that it starts to cause problems. And I think that we'll want a little bit more like that. Now, I am slightly concerned about the noise along this highway. We'll probably want to do some sound barriers. It'll be interesting to see how that works out. And again, I like having these roads that don't always connect. I think it's interesting. Yes, I realize that's a 5-way intersection, but it's in the middle of a residential area, so I don't think I care too terribly much. And then 4-way intersections, I generally try to avoid, but you can tell that we only have 2 main intersections there and 2 main intersections here. We're going to probably cut one right in the middle here that loops through to the outer loop there. Probably another one that curves around like so. This one can curve around into there. And that's probably fine. That gives us a couple more. Well, no, we'll do one more off of that onto the main outer loop like so. And then just fill in the gaps. And there's not really a rhyme or reason to this. I realize that it might actually look like I'm trying to do this in a particular way. You would be wrong, unfortunately, because I really don't have any idea what I'm doing. I'm just kind of making stuff up as I go along. And I think that it provides what I would like to say is a fairly reasonable, natural suburban feel. It's got a bunch of roads that end right before you get back to the avenue. It's got some curvature to it. It's got some nice, internal cul-de-sac style things, even though you can't necessarily do cul-de-sacs in this game without mods, and I don't have a cul-de-sac mod. But you see how there's some major cross streets and then there aren't major cross streets, and it just I just really like the way that it ends up looking. And you just kind of do it randomly. You don't think about it. It's actually a great time to banter, let me tell you. I am trying to get better about figuring out what I can banter about during some of the more boring sections like this. Because, I mean, for one, you kind of have to get used to talking at a camera. I mean, I'm not even talking to a camera. I'm talking into a microphone while I'm playing a game. And it takes a lot of getting used to. You know, I really feel for the streamers that have been doing this for a long time, and I think it's awesome that they're able to provide the content that they do. Let's loop this back around like that. That looks nice and awkward. This one can cut across there as well. Yeah, I just don't really have much to say about that, but that's a nice, huge suburban section. Again, we wanted to fill in some commercial zoning along this road. And I pretty much always do commercial zoning on my avenues for my suburban areas, and all of the interior roads are residential. That means that we'll have plenty of space for commercial and residential to both move in, and also means that there's a pretty clear delineation between the two. The smaller interior streets are meant for residents, and so like right here, I'm not going to zone commercial. That's really going to be a residential space. I like the fact that the National Highway does not have zoning. It kind of breaks things up a little bit and gives you a nice feel as you drive through the area, that there's nothing immediately on the highway. It gives you almost a little bit of a rural feel, maybe a little bit of a sub-rural. Also, that's one of the hardest words in the English language to pronounce. Rural. Rural. It's so weird. I mean, I've lived in Texas my whole life, and you hear it pronounced a million different ways. I mean, you'll hear some of us here Texans saying that's their rural, but it's not an easy word to pronounce. I'm going to be honest with you. We're going to then grab the marquee tool and click and drag, and everything else in here is now low density residential, and I think we missed a spot. So look at all of that suburban area that we have. We won't have residential demand again for a while. Now the question is, what about city services? Well, because we can't zone along the highway, and if I put a hospital, down here, it doesn't quite cover everything. So sometimes it's good to put it on one of these streets, and it also may not be a bad idea to have the center highway not be a highway anymore. But you also kind of revisit your connections a bit. It also sometimes is better to just go ahead and do med clinics, but I think because of the money we have, I'm going to just do 2 hospitals. Put one there, and I cannot put one there. We'll have to put it right here. Yeah, that'll work fine. We'll do a single cemetery in the residential area, something I like to do. It's kind of like a park. We'll do another cemetery up here with a crematorium next to each one because it makes sense. Fire, we'll do the same thing. Put a fire station up there and a fire station down here. Same thing with police. Police down here. Police up here. That'll give us all the coverage we need. Now for this, I think elementary schools look best if they're nestled in the suburbs, nestled on these little side streets, I should say. Let's put one there, one here, one here. I mean, I like a lot of elementary schools. It makes a lot of sense to me. If you've ever been to like suburban areas in Texas, there's elementary schools all over the place. I think we'll put a high school on this corner, and that's not really a corner, so I can't say and on this corner, but up there as well. I think that we'll probably want to do some sort of transit to get you from the suburban area into the industrial area and to the train line. I don't really want to bring Metro out here. I think that Metro makes sense in this part of the city and will make sense on the tourist island. So probably what I would do is just grab some bus lines, and we cannot run bus lines along the highway, it looks like. Well, we can't do bus stops on the highway. So the best way to do this is probably going to be... No, I wouldn't mind if that had a single lane that could go off into the service road. I think this is going to be the main way to get... I don't really want to have bus lines on the service road. It's going to cause problems. So maybe that's not the best way to do it. Maybe we do want to run some metro lines up here. Maybe even run one right into the city center and out here following the train, but that kind of defeats the purpose of the train. So I think what I want to do, I liked the thought of this being a national highway at first, but I've kind of fallen back on the thought, and instead am probably going to make it a 4-lane with bus lanes and just run a single bus line down onto the service road and up to each of those 2 train stations, maybe just to that one. Maybe what we can do... See, I get a little distracted, I get a little crazy with my ideas. Maybe, just maybe, and I do think this is potentially a terrible plan, is run a 2-lane road like this. Oh man, that is pretty terribly ugly, not gonna lie. I don't know if I want them to be able to turn left there. We'll let that be a thing for the moment. But what this allows us to do is run a bus line from this stop needs to be on this side of the road. Sorry. That's not correct. Why do you think you need to... I think because this is probably already managed. So you are... I've done lane connections by hand. This lane can also turn left. Okay, now the bus line will work properly. There. Why is this not working the way that I expect it to? Theoretically, if I put a bus stop right here, they should be able to turn left, and they can. If I put a bus stop right there, they can't turn left in time. Okay. I understand now. It makes sense to me. We're going to want to put a bus stop there and probably just take this bus line all the way around this outer loop. This also does not feel like the right use case for a bus line, but maybe it will be okay. We'll put a stop there at that train station and then just connect it up. That seems fine. I'm probably going to rethink the bus here. I don't know that this is the right answer. We're going to need probably a lot of buses on this route. 11 stops, and it's just kind of massive. We'll turn that up to 15 vehicles right off the bat. I can almost guarantee you we'll need a lot of buses to handle the workload. We did manage to spend half of our available money, which is fantastic. Electricity is also running low. Let's go ahead and knock that out while we're looking at it. So we'll drop in another solar updraft tower up here. Finding a spot for it may be slightly complicated. We'll just drop it in along the service road here. That's perfectly fine. So let's go up to 3 times speed and wait to see how things start to fill in. So obviously there's going to be power problems. We can run some underground power lines just to make things a bit less crazy. Drop one there, one there. Just because it's going to take a while for things to fill in, it's probably the best way to handle things, just doing some underground power lines like this. That way everything gets properly powered. Water availability and sewage treatment is fine. We have a ton of school availability up here now as well. I think putting a park up here can potentially improve land value of industry. So I'm going to put a park right in the middle, just because the higher the land value up here increases, and it may only be city services, but the more land value increases, the higher the level, which means that it'll actually accept educated workers. So we are already running into traffic problems up here, mostly because of the buses. And I cannot say that I am shocked in the slightest. I also think that the buses need to be on the other side of the road. I'm just going to go in and delete this line. I will figure out the public transit on my own time. I think that this is just flat out not going to work. I'm going to delete that line. We need some easy way to get residents from here to the commuter train so that they can head into the city, because this is obviously not going to work. I do expect there to be a good bit of traffic. This intersection is most certainly a mess. There's no junction there or street light. Let's just wait for the buses to get off the road, and that'll help. Junction restrictions is this one. Let's make these free-flowing. Probably going to make my life much easier if all of these are free-flowing, so that we don't have to worry about whether or not they're blocking those intersections. Train lines are definitely getting used. Just checking why they're red, and it's probably just because this mod doesn't handle trains as well as it handles roads. Traffic flow is still fantastic. We've got some people moving in up here. We are in rush hour right now, and we're still sitting at a solid 92%. This will absolutely start growing and will give us a ton of population. And this is really the large expansion that we needed in order to start really feeling the effects of our city long term. Like I said, you can see this is starting to get cleaned up. We've got our leisure district. We've got this really cool inner city, circle city thing going on. We've got our park that's making us buku bucks. I mean, look at how many people are going through our park. This is such a huge attraction in our city. There are a ton of people going through here. Over here, we are starting to see some houses pop in. I'm going to go ahead and throw down some parks while I'm thinking about it, because land value is important. Higher land value means higher taxes, And not that money is necessarily even a remote concern for us at this point in the game. It's nice to have. Where's some of my smaller parks? There we go. You want them spread out throughout your suburb area. There we go. So that'll make people happy, that'll increase land value. Let's take a look at our land value, actually. So it's doing fine down here, nothing too crazy. I mean, obviously, if you go look at something like this, it's already leveled all the way up. It's got plenty of the highly educated people. Everything's fine there. University availability is in a good spot. And as residential demand starts to come and go, people can move in down here, people can move in up here, and we will start to have traffic problems soon, which I'm kind of excited about. I want to see what sort of issues we have. Oh my gosh, look at that metro. 1,300 passengers just on the green line. And we're handling it. I mean, these two metro lines are nuts with the amount of passengers that they can handle. The buses are getting some action as well. It seems like we do have plenty of buses on each line. In fact, some of them may arguably be a little bit overpopulated with buses. Like this one, for example, probably has a few too many buses on it. That's something that we can go in and correct as time goes by. We are also getting some usage on our train lines. The internal loop is doing fine. Only has 2 trains on it. We may want to consider adding more trains just because it does take them a while to get through the loop. The 2 suburbs has a single train on it right now, and it appears that this train is blocked. What is this train doing? It says boarding. What happened here? This train is bugged. So I'm going to remove it and go back to transport and see if it will automatically add another vehicle. It did. So let's follow it and see if it runs into the same problem again. There are actually a lot of passengers wanting to take this train. So it may be good to go ahead and add in a second one. So yeah, no, it's perfectly fine. That one was just bugged out. So because this is starting to build up with people and will continue to build up as we get more people moving into the suburban area, let's go ahead and add a second train. And I think that is probably a good place to stop for this episode. You can tell that, is this complaining about not enough raw materials? So that's a problem with highway access. We've got some worker issues. We've got power issues up here. It's always something. It's always something. We built out a new area, and that means that there's going to be problems. But I'm going to go into cinematic camera mode. I think it's time for our outro. Thank you all so much for watching. Likes and comments help out the channel a lot, as do subscriptions if you want to see videos like this in the future. I'm going to keep this series going for quite some time, so if you're excited about that, feel free to subscribe so that you can be updated when these videos come out. If you'd like to connect with me directly, check out our Discord. Also, if you're interested in donating to my channel, there's a Patreon link in the description. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the heck out of this episode, and I cannot wait to see you on the next one.